Morny, who's up next?
Yes. I have one from Valakir, who asked me to ask it on his request or on his behalf.
Okay.
So it's, why is there no invoker tank spec? Who doesn't want like a Dragon Knight spec, kind of like how it the one in ESO was, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
And I do have some comments and thoughts on that myself too, but
Alright.
I'll let you go first.
So, if the last two classes is anything to go by, it's clear that Blizzard doesn't quite like the 3-spec design of classes. The problem is that they've sort of painted themselves into a corner with all of the old classes. If classes suddenly lost a spec, that would be disastrous. I think we all can agree with that, right? No one's going to be happy about that. But, as it were, there's not much we can do, and holy shit, SSG with the $50 fucking dollars. Dude, you're a madman. I really appreciate that donation, by the way. I will get to your question in a second. But alright, so Morny, I would argue that if you're going to have a system with 3 specs per class, that becomes ridiculous in and of itself. Yeah? Very quickly. It's already ridiculous. We already have specs that Blizzard sort of have to go out of their way to make work. It's a difficult one to answer because I am in agreement with everything you fucking said. I want a tank spec for the Invoker. I want to be an Invoker tank. But I can also understand why Blizzard wouldn't do it. Because in order to pull it off, you would almost certainly have to steal a bunch of abilities from other classes, right? Because breathing fire monks, sort of jumping around, because dragons would almost definitely be mobile, probably going to take quite a bit from demon hunters. So is the playstyle going to be very similar to what demon hunters play? Going to be similar to something like monks, for example? What exactly is what is it going to be exactly that this class plays out as? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Let me ask this.
Well, with me, I think that I think you're right that Blizzard has kind of, with the last few 2 classes, revealed that they kind of want to go away from the 3 specs to a class build, and I'm personally okay with the Invoker just being a healer and ranged DPS.
Yeah.
The tank aspect that could have made it unique is something that won't work in WoW. Yeah. Like basically the ranged tank, like you've seen them do in like Overwatch or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Heroes of the Storm, where you had Rexar, but that was basically pet tanking.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could see with the current toolkit that the Invoker has, is that they'd be a tank but primarily range. Well, but how would you handle that?
Just great. They could go time tank. So a tank that can stop time and therefore nullify damage, or take damage and then reverse time and therefore reverse the damage that they just took. Sort of speed up time in order to sort of regenerate a lot of health in a very quick... So you could go very time tanking with it. You would also have, of course, the life binder element if you wanted to go sort of bronze and red in this instance, where bronze and red for a lot of healing and stuff like that. You could go black dragon, which would obviously draw from the earth, and that would provide it with a lot of healing or tanking capabilities. So really you do have a lot of options when it comes to mitigation tanking within this. So it could really be cool. I just feel like it's not so much even stealing abilities from other tanks as it is just an abundance of specs. So World of Warcraft, in my opinion, has a fundamental problem when it comes to the freedom in how they design their classes. And I realize that this is something that no one wants to hear, but World of Warcraft, as it currently stands, has 37 classes. As a game, I think World of Warcraft has the most classes in any game ever. It's 37. That is a ridiculous amount of classes to have. It's going to be 39 next expansion. And before you go, we don't. Yes, we do. every single spec in World of Warcraft is something completely different. It is a class in and of itself. When you're an Affliction Warlock, you play nothing like a Destruction Warlock. You kind of play like a Demonology Warlock, only a little bit more mobile, but even then, it's not really the same thing. When you're an Arcane Mage, you're nothing like a Frost Mage or a Fire Mage. When you're a Survival Hunter, you're nothing like a Marksman Hunter, you're nothing like a Beastmaster. So at the end of the day, you have 38 or 40 different classes that you have to balance, first and foremost, provide abilities for that is unique. And then also you have to innovatively think about how to apply and sort of work with these different sort of classes, right? That's a lot, you know? That is a fuck ton of things that you have to get right in the game. So I would actually be a huge proponent, and I realize that's not really part of the question that was asked, but I would be a huge proponent of Blizzard looking at taking a closer look at every single one of the classes and removing things that is unnecessary. So merging a lot of the specs into one another and making it a little bit more cool. So a question that immediately comes to mind is, why would a warrior need to choose between being an arms warrior or a fury warrior? Why could the difference not simply be whether you have two two-handers or one two-hander? And that will affect the way your spells and abilities work, right? But it's
kinda
all
like
one
building
spec.
off of, yeah, kind of like building off of how, well, with that example, it's more like how Final Fantasy does it, where the weapon determines the role, but then also there's the aspect of back in Legion where everyone had a artifact weapon and it put people into specific roles. Now, you still had to be that specific specialization to use it, but for example, you had the with Monk, you had that staff for healing, a staff for tanking, and then I believe it was dual wielding fist weapons or something for DPS. And then I actually have a tiny bit of speculation to throw your way based off of the question that was asked, as well as what we've kind of talked about with Dragonflight in the last podcast.
I'm all ears. Speculation piques my fucking interest. Let's do this.
So, as we know, they say that you can draw on all the Dragonflights as a Dracthyr invoker, but they only mention 4 flights.
Oh yeah, the thing that's triggered the living fuck out of me ever since they announced it, because 4 times in 4 different interviews and in the announcement they say it can draw from all 5 of the Dragonflights, and then they say for damage or for DPS this is red and blue. No, blue
red and blue.
Yeah, red and blue, and then for healing, this is bronze and green. And I'm sort of going, huh? Where the fuck's the black? Like, you say all 5 and then you just name 4. Where's the black Dragonflight? All right, I'm following, yeah?
So, my bit of speculation would be, what if they took into account, from a lore perspective, the diminished status of the Black Dragonflight, combined with the fact that it was Neltharion that did the experimentations that created the Dracthyr. But then, one step further for the speculation part, what if it's because the Black Dragonflight is still corrupted as a whole, and or Neltharion was starting to be corrupted when he made the Invokers and was just trying to harness the other Dragonflight's powers for a proto-Dragon Soul? Because he did have to go to the other aspects to have them bequeath part of their power to them. And if this is an experimental race and class made by Neltharion, what if this was his original experiment to see if he could just do it all himself in secret and not have to go about with trying to convince the other aspects to partake of the Dragon Soul? I
mean, I would be on board with all of that. Like, any direction Blizzard wants to take there. Because the one direction is at the... Well, that triggered me a little, saying one direction. But anyways, one of the paths Blizzard could go down would be at the end of the expansion, they add the tank spec when we finally install an actual aspect for the Black Dragons. Because the Black Dragons currently is without an aspect, which would mean if you follow my speculation for long enough, you would know that I had a video quite a long time ago. I think back in Legion already. I made a video talking about how the power of the Dragonflight influenced the aspect and vice versa. And it's sort of like, fuck you, Devin. How dare you? I am triggered now. But anyways, so how the aspect draws its power from the flight. But in turn, the flight draws its power from the aspect. So it is sort of a give and take scenario between these two. So both provide power. If you have no aspect, then the people in the flight is severely underpowered. Like, severely underpowered as a result of that, right? So it could be that even if the invokers tried to channel black magic or black dragonflight magic, they would not be successful because there is no conduit for this, right? It doesn't have a conduit yet. So that is definitely one part that I can absolutely get on board with. There's another theory that I heard the day I got so triggered by this, and that is that what if all the black dragonflight abilities actually fall within the class tier? So you know, you have the spec tier, the spec tree, and then you have the class tree. So what if all the black dragonflight abilities actually fall into the utility class tree abilities? So this is going to be your stuff that reduces income damage, or you know, provides you with sort of routing effects or stuff like that, right? So more utility based stuff, which I can see. I don't necessarily think that is wholly outside of the scope of possibility. I just feel like that is still downplaying the significance of what black dragonflight, like what black dragons could do, sort of relegating them to just utility based, rather than, because you could do some really cool stuff with damage based earth abilities. But then again, Blizzard could also probably have argued earth abilities already shaman, let's not start fucking around with that too much, you know. So ultimately I feel like there's a lot still that we have to, there's a lot of work ahead for Blizzard with their class design and how they're actually going to make their class design work, right? I don't think it is sustainable to bring out new classes and give them 3 specs every single time. I think this is wholly unsustainable. But the answer can also not just be to keep adding classes willy-nilly with 2 specs, and you constantly leave out I think one of the roles right now that maybe requires the most love, which is tanks. In my personal opinion, if you're asking me for like a no holds barred sort of rework of all classes, I would go back to embracing the role of support classes in World of Warcraft, relegating the importance of DPS in World of Warcraft to the point where you don't really care who is top of the DPS meter, because most of the fight is more about survivability than what it is about who can boom the highest. So give people back support classes that aren't necessarily the best DPS, the best at DPS. They're not necessarily the best at tanking, but without them the fights would be significantly harder, right? And in that regard, you allow yourself a lot more freedom in what you want to build, rather than trying to build everything. Because right now, every tank in World of Warcraft must be able to be a main tank. I remember back in the days of TBC, back in the days of Wrath, even back in the day of Cataclysm, you used to have off tanks. And I mean true off tanks. Because you would usually have a very strong tank. Back in the days of Wrath, Druids were incredibly strong tanks. DKs were incredibly strong tanks. But then you had your classes that weren't necessarily as strong as the main tank, but they were incredibly good as the off tank. So they would usually taunt off the main tank before massive abilities would hit. And they would eat those abilities instead, right? So they were, for example, a lot better at multi-tanking, and therefore you would put them on the ads as it were, the main tanks the boss. I think embracing things like this again, where certain tank classes are just more utility based. So you have tanks that is incredible at AoE tanking, but not so good at single target tanking. And then you have your tanks that is just monsters on single target, but adequate at best at multi-target tanking. So give them that trade-off that allows for a more varied playstyle. But then also you have to start looking at Mythic Plus and how exactly is that going to work for Mythic Plus, so that you don't fuck over anyone, but you do embrace the more, shall we say, embrace a more varied playstyle that gives you more freedom in how you wish to design things. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think before I leave you to bring on the next guest, I'm going to leave you with this.
Okay.
Your 2 points about the Black Dragonflight have given me an idea for a topic to bring up in the podcast, at least as far as speculation goes.
Please write it down, because last time we fucking had Andy with a wonderful idea, and then when the Livecraft episode started, he forgot the fucking idea. So just write down the idea, please. All right. Well, then I'll see you later tonight for the Livecraft episode.
Absolutely.
Moni, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from Ace.
Ace. All right. I'm going to pull Ace up soon. I just quickly want to answer $50 worth of donations. So I'll pull him up in a second.